The crystal towers of Veltheros Prime burned against the night sky. Ambassador Thexara pressed her translucent hands against the cold window of the council chamber, watching as another wave of enemy machines crashed into the planetary shields. Each impact sent ripples of blue energy across the protective dome that had kept her people safe for 3,000 years. But the shields were failing. "How long do we have?" she asked without turning around. Defense Commander Velox checked his readings again, hoping the numbers had changed. They hadn't. 6 hours. Maybe 7 if we redirect power from the city districts. Thexara's crystalline body flickered with colors of deep sadness. The Velthari had always been proud of their advanced technology and peaceful ways. Their energy shields were the strongest in the galaxy. Their cities floated in perfect harmony above their world's surface. They had never needed to fight wars because no one could break through their defenses, until now. The Devourers had come from the dark space between galaxies. Ancient machines that ate entire star systems, turning planets and suns into fuel for their endless hunger. The Corvan Empire had tried to fight them with their massive fleets. The Corvan ships were destroyed in days. The Mindari Collective had used their psychic powers to try controlling the machines. The Devourers simply adapted and kept coming. Now every major civilization in the galaxy was either dead or running. The Great Nixari Federation had retreated to their hidden worlds. The proud Zephian Commonwealth had gone silent 3 months ago. Even the mysterious ethereal Watchers, who claimed to be millions of years old, had simply vanished. Only the Velthari remained, protected by their shields and their stubborn hope that someone would find a way to stop the machines. "Send the message again," Thexara said. "All frequencies maximum power." Velox nodded to his communications officer. They had been broadcasting the same desperate plea for days. "Help us, anyone. We are the last free world in this sector. If we fall, the Devourers will have a clear path to the galactic core." The message went out in every known language, on every possible frequency. It traveled through hyperspace networks that connected thousands of worlds. It reached the hidden bases where survivors huddled in fear. It touched the sensors of fleeing refugee ships and it got no response. Thexara had given up hope when the communications panel lit up with an incoming signal. The officer, a young Velthari named Kexani, stared at the readings in confusion. "Ambassador, we're receiving a response." Thexara spun around, her body flashing bright white with surprise. "From who? The Nexari? The Ethereals?" Kexani checked her instruments twice before answering. "Unknown, ma'am. The signal is coming from the Outer Rim, Sector 7749. That's impossible," Velox said. "That sector has no advanced civilizations. Our records show only primitive worlds with basic technology." "Play the message," Thexara ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything they had heard before. It was rough and simple, speaking galactic standard with a strange accent. The grammar was basic, like a child learning to talk. Message received. "We hear you. Help is coming. Hold your position. Do not give up." Silence filled the chamber. Finally, Velox spoke. That's from one of the primitive worlds? How did they even receive our transmission?" Thexara studied the data streaming across her screens. The signal definitely came from a small yellow star in an empty part of the galaxy. According to their records, the system contained several planets, including one with carbon-based life forms that had just discovered radio technology. "This has to be a mistake," she said, "or maybe some kind of echo from an old transmission." Another impact shook the building as more Devourer machines struck the shields. The blue dome flickered for a moment before stabilizing. They were getting stronger. Kexani looked up from her station. "Ambassador, there's something else. I'm detecting movement in that system. Ships, I think. Lots of them." "What kind of ships?" Velox demanded. I don't know. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They're not using hyperspace drives or quantum tunnels. It's something completely different." Thexara felt a flutter of hope in her chest, quickly followed by bitter disappointment. Even if the impossible was true, even if that primitive world had somehow developed space travel, what could they do? The Devourers had destroyed fleets of 1 million ships. The greatest military minds in the galaxy had failed. What could a handful of primitive vessels accomplish? Outside, the shields flickered again, staying dark for almost 3 seconds before coming back online. Warning alarms began to sound throughout the city. Citizens looked up at the sky, watching the blue dome that protected them grow weaker with each passing hour. "We should evacuate," Velox said quietly. "Get the people to the deep shelters while we still can." Thexara nodded slowly. It was the smart choice, the realistic choice. Whatever was coming from that distant system, it wouldn't be enough. Nothing was enough against the Devourers. But as she gave the evacuation order, she found herself looking at the communications panel. The signal from the primitive world was still there, still transmitting. Just 2 words over and over: "Coming soon. Coming soon. Coming soon?" The voice was calm and confident, as if the speaker truly believed they could help, as if they had a plan. Thexara had lived for over 2,000 years. She had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. She had watched the galaxy's greatest powers crumble before the Devourer threat. She knew that hope was dangerous when facing impossible odds. But something in that simple, rough voice made her want to believe. "Delay the evacuation," she said suddenly. "Ambassador?" Velox stared at her in shock. "Give them time to arrive. Whatever they are, whoever they are, they answered our call. No one else did." As if in response to her words, space itself seemed to shiver above their world. The Devourer machines paused in their attack, their sensors detecting something they had never encountered before. Something was coming. And for the first time in months, Thexara allowed herself to hope that it might be enough. The space above Veltharos Prime twisted like heated metal. Reality bent and folded in ways that made the Velthari sensors scream with alarm. Even the Devourer machines stopped their attack, their ancient programming struggling to understand what they were seeing. Then the first ship appeared. It didn't emerge from hyperspace like normal vessels. It didn't use quantum tunnels or wormhole gates. Instead, it seemed to tear through the fabric of space itself, leaving ripples of distorted starlight in its wake. The ship was massive, easily 2 kilometers long, but its design was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Where most starships were smooth and curved, this one had sharp angles and brutal lines. Its hull was dark gray metal covered in strange symbols. Energy readings showed power levels that should have been impossible for a ship that size. Ambassador Thexara watched from the council chamber as 11 more ships appeared, each one ripping through space-time with casual ease. Her translucent body flickered with amazement and fear. "What are we looking at?" she whispered. Defense Commander Velox was frantically checking his instruments. "I don't know. Their technology. It's not following any known physics. Those ships should collapse under their own energy output. But they're stable, more than stable. They're perfectly controlled." The lead ship moved closer to the planet, ignoring the millions of Devourer machines that surrounded it. A communication signal cut through all other frequencies, broadcast in that same rough, simple voice they had heard before. "This is Admiral Deho of the Terran Space Command vessel Incheon's Pride. We received your distress call. Prepare for tactical engagement. All friendly forces move to safe distance, Terran." The word meant nothing to the Velthari databases, but the confidence in the voice was unmistakable. On the bridge of the Incheon's Pride, Admiral Deho studied the tactical display. His weathered face remained calm as he took in the scope of the enemy force. Behind him, his command crew worked with quiet efficiency that spoke of years of training and combat experience. "Captain Jamin, what's our assessment?" Deho asked. Captain Jamin, a lean man with intelligent eyes, highlighted sections of the enemy formation. Approximately 2 million hostile units. Mix of small fighters and larger construct ships. They're using basic swarm tactics, relying on overwhelming numbers rather than sophisticated strategy. "Weapon status?" Lieutenant Yujin looked up from her tactical station. "All kinetic systems online and ready. Relativistic cannon charged to full capacity. Fighter squadron standing by." Engineer Specialist Sora adjusted her controls and nodded. "Fusion drives operating at peak efficiency, sir. Gravity manipulation systems are stable. We can maintain combat maneuvers indefinitely." Communications Officer Taewoo turned in his seat. "Admiral, the local defenders are trying to contact us. They're asking about our capabilities and requesting coordination." Deho considered this for a moment. The crystal beings on the planet below seemed decent enough, but their technology was clearly inferior to the enemy machines. They would only get in the way. "Tell them to maintain their shields and stay out of our engagement zone," he said. "This won't take long." On Veltharos Prime, Thexara listened to the human response with growing confusion. 12 ships, no matter how advanced, against 2 million enemies. It was suicide. Should we offer assistance? Velox asked. Before Thexera could answer, the human fleet moved into action. What happened next changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. The Terran ships didn't spread out to engage the enemy from multiple angles. They didn't launch waves of missiles or fire energy beams. Instead, they did something that seemed completely insane. They accelerated, not the careful, measured acceleration of normal starships, but a brutal surge of speed that defied every law of physics the Velthari understood. The ships moved from standstill to significant fractions of light speed in seconds, their hulls glowing with the energy of their passage. The Devourer machines responded as they had been programmed to do. They swarmed toward the human fleet, millions of mechanical killers converging on 12 targets. Then the humans opened fire, but they weren't using energy weapons. Instead, they launched solid metal projectiles the size of small buildings. The projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, becoming relativistic missiles that carried the destructive force of small stars. When the first kinetic round hit a Devourer construct ship, it didn't just destroy the target. It vaporized it completely and kept going, punching through 17 more enemy vessels before its energy was finally spent. Captain Jae-min watched the enemy formation crumble with professional satisfaction. Adjust targeting. Focus fire on their command nodes. The human tactics were devastatingly effective. While the Devourers tried to swarm like insects, the Terran ships fought like apex predators. They moved through space with impossible grace, their gravity manipulation drives allowing them to change direction and speed without regard for momentum or inertia. Pilot Commander Haewon led her fighter squadrons in a charge that looked like choreographed madness. Her small ships danced between enemy fire, moving in patterns that hurt to watch. They struck at weak points with surgical precision, each attack calculated to cause maximum damage to the enemy's ability to coordinate. Science Officer Kyung-ho monitored the battle from his station, analyzing enemy responses and adjusting human tactics accordingly. Admiral, the machines are trying to adapt to our weapons. Recommend switching to secondary protocols. Approved, Daeho said calmly. The human ships suddenly changed their attack pattern. Instead of long-range kinetic strikes, they moved in close for brutal ramming attacks. Their reinforced hulls, designed to withstand the stress of space-time manipulation, tore through enemy vessels like knives through paper. When Captain Minho's ship took damage to its main weapons, he didn't retreat for repairs. Instead, he ordered his crew to ram the nearest Devourer command ship, using his vessel's mass and speed as a weapon. Lieutenant Commander Yansu coordinated damage control across the fleet, while simultaneously calculating new attack vectors. Her calm voice guided damaged ships to safety while directing healthy vessels to take advantage of gaps in the enemy formation. The battle that the Velthari had expected to last hours was over in 47 minutes. When the last Devourer machine exploded into scrap metal, the space around Veltheros Prime was filled with debris and the strange energy signatures of human technology. The 12 Terran ships hung motionless against the stars, their hulls scarred but intact. In the council chamber, Ambassador Thexera stared at the tactical display in complete silence. 2 million enemy machines, the same force that had destroyed the greatest fleets in galactic history, had been utterly annihilated by 12 ships from a world that shouldn't even have space travel. How? She whispered. The question would haunt the galaxy for years to come. 3 hours after the battle ended, Ambassador Thexera stood in the transport bay of the Terran flagship, trying not to stare at the humans who had just saved her world. They looked so ordinary. Admiral Daeho was a middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple uniform of dark blue fabric with silver markings. Nothing about him suggested he commanded weapons that could reshape the laws of physics. When he spoke, his voice was the same rough, simple tone they had heard over the radio. "Your world is safe now," he said through a translation device. "The machines will not return to this system." "How can you be certain?" Thexera asked. Her crystalline form flickered with curiosity and lingering fear. Captain Jae-min stepped forward, a data pad in his hands. "We destroyed their command network completely. The surviving machines and other systems received the termination signal. They know what happened here." Thexera struggled to understand. "But there were only 12 of your ships. The Devourers had millions of units across hundreds of systems. Surely they can't all know about one battle." The humans exchanged glances, and Thexara caught something she hadn't expected to see. They looked almost embarrassed. The machines share information instantly across vast distances, explained Science Officer Kyung-ho. He was younger than the others, with bright eyes and quick gestures. When we destroyed their command nodes, we made sure to broadcast our weapon signatures on their own communication network. Every devourer in this galaxy now knows that humanity exists. And they're afraid? Velox asked. The defense commander had insisted on joining the meeting, despite his obvious nervousness around the strange aliens. Lieutenant Yu Jin, the tactical officer, smiled grimly. Terror would be a better word. The Devourers are ancient machines. They've conquered thousands of galaxies over millions of years, but they've never encountered anything like human warfare. Admiral Daeho gestured toward the viewing port, where the debris field from the battle still glittered in the starlight. Your people fight in predictable patterns. Energy weapons, missile systems, standard fleet formations. The machines can adapt to those tactics because they've seen them before. But humans fight differently? Thexara asked. Humans fight to win, Captain Jamin said simply. We don't care about honor or tradition or following proper military doctrine. We care about stopping the enemy permanently. Chief Engineer Boram joined the conversation, wiping oil from her hands with a dirty cloth. She was a compact woman with calloused fingers and a direct way of speaking. Your people built beautiful ships and powerful shields. You created art and philosophy and peaceful societies. We respect that, but Thexara sensed there was more. But we built weapons, Boram continued. For the last 300 years, every human technological advance has been focused on one goal, preparing for a war that everyone said was impossible to win. The revelation hit Thexara like a physical blow. You knew about the Devourers? Intelligence Officer Dayun stepped forward. She was a quiet woman with sharp eyes who seemed to notice everything. We detected the first signs of their expansion when we developed deep space monitoring systems. Radio signals from civilizations that suddenly went silent. Gravitational anomalies consistent with large-scale matter conversion. The pattern was clear. Why didn't you warn anyone? Velox demanded. Our people could have prepared. The humans looked uncomfortable again. Finally, Admiral Daeho answered. We tried. We sent messages to the major galactic powers 2 centuries ago. The Corvan Empire classified our transmissions as primitive noise. The Nexari Federation decided we were too underdeveloped to take seriously. The Mindari Collective examined our minds from a distance and dismissed us as violent barbarians. Thexara felt her body flicker with shame. She remembered those ancient reports about strange signals from the outer rim. Her own people had filed them away as curiosities, nothing more than radio chatter from a backward world. So we prepared alone, Captain Jamin continued. Every human colony, every research station, every military installation focused on a single question. How do you fight an enemy that has conquered galaxies? Dr. Yunji, the fleet specialist in alien cultures, pulled out a small device that projected holographic images. We studied every record we could find of the Devourers' previous campaigns. They always won the same way. Overwhelming numbers, adaptive technology, and predictable enemy responses. The holograms showed battle after battle, galaxy after galaxy falling to the machine swarms. Thexara watched civilizations she had never heard of make the same tactical mistakes over and over. They expected us to follow the same patterns, Dr. Yunji explained. Large fleets in organized formations, energy-based weapons, attempts to negotiate or find peaceful solutions. When we did the unexpected, their programming couldn't adapt fast enough. Fleet Admiral Sun Wu, who had been silent until now, stepped closer to the viewing port. He was an older man with steady hands and calculating eyes. The galaxy spent millions of years perfecting technologies that the Devourers had already learned to counter. We spent 3 centuries developing technologies they had never seen. Like your space folding drives, Thexara said. Quantum inertial dampening, corrected Engineer Sora. We discovered that space-time could be manipulated locally to ignore certain physical laws. Momentum, acceleration limits, energy conservation, all of them become suggestions rather than rules. And your kinetic weapons? Relativistic artillery, Captain Jamin said. We accelerate dense metal projectiles to near light speed using gravity manipulation. Each shot carries more energy than most civilizations use to power their homeworlds. Thexara tried to process the implications. But the cost, the energy requirements, We've been building fusion reactors since before we left our home system, Boram explained. Every human ship can generate more power than your planetary shields. We had to. Our enemies weren't going to give us time to recharge between battles. The conversation was interrupted by Communications Officer Tae Woo. Admiral, we're receiving multiple distress calls. 17 different systems reporting Devourer activity. They're asking for assistance. Admiral Daeho nodded calmly. Dispatch the 2nd and 3rd fleets to respond. Standard engagement protocols. How many ships do you have? Velox asked in amazement. Lieutenant Commander Yeon-Soo checked her datapad. Currently deployed? About 1,500 vessels across 12 fleets. But production facilities on Earth and the colonies are launching new ships every week. Thexara felt dizzy. 1,500 ships with the same impossible capabilities she had just witnessed? The humans hadn't just prepared for war with the Devourers. They had built an entire civilization around the concept of victory through superior force. What happens now? She asked quietly. Admiral Daeho turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something other than professional competence in his expression. She saw kindness. Now we do what we came here to do, he said. We help. The Devourers are finished in this galaxy. But there are other threats, other problems that peaceful civilizations can't handle alone. And you'll respond to all of them? Every distress call, Captain Jamin confirmed. Every cry for help. That's what humans do. As if to prove his point, Pilot Commander Haewon's voice came over the ship's communication system. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting a massive refugee convoy under attack in the Zerion system. Estimated enemy force, 500,000 Devourer units. Admiral Daeho smiled, and Thexara realized it was the expression of a predator who had found prey. Set course for Zerion. Combat speed. The ship around them hummed with purposeful energy as it prepared to fold space once again. Thexara watched through the viewing port as the impossible human fleet gathered itself for another battle they couldn't possibly lose. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months later, the reformed Galactic Council met on the neutral world of Sanctuary Prime. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Assembly Hall, their various forms and colors creating a living rainbow of galactic diversity. But every eye was focused on the simple table where 5 humans sat quietly, waiting to be formally recognized. Ambassador Thexara had been chosen to speak for the surviving civilizations. Her crystalline body pulsed with nervous energy as she approached the podium. The humans had saved not just her world, but 47 others in the past half-year. The Devourer threat was completely eliminated from their galaxy, reduced to scattered debris fields and terrified machine fragments fleeing toward distant stars. Honored representatives, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. We gather today to formally welcome Earth and the Terran Federation to the galactic community. But first, we must address the questions that have troubled us all. She gestured toward Admiral Daeho, who sat calmly in his simple uniform, looking more like a tired office worker than the deadliest military commander in galactic history. How did a species we classified as primitive develop technology that surpasses our greatest achievements? How did they know about threats we couldn't even detect? And why did they choose to help us? Admiral Daeho rose slowly and walked to the speaker's platform. He looked out at the assembled representatives with steady eyes, taking a moment to organize his thoughts. When he spoke, it was in the same simple, direct style that had become familiar to survivors across the galaxy. My people are not special, he said. We are not more intelligent than you or braver or naturally better at war. The only difference is that we had no choice but to become good at solving impossible problems. He activated a holographic display that showed Earth as it had been 3 centuries earlier, a blue-green world covered in cities and industrial complexes, surrounded by orbital platforms and mining stations. When we first detected the Devourer expansion, we realized something that your civilizations did not. We were alone. You had the luxury of stable societies, advanced technology, and millions of years to perfect your knowledge. We had none of that. The display changed to show the early days of human space exploration, crude rockets carrying tiny capsules barely able to reach their own moon. We were trapped in a single star system with primitive technology and limited resources. If the Devourers came for us, no one would help. No one would even notice we were gone. Dr. Yunji stood and joined Daeho at the platform. The pressure of that knowledge changed everything about human development. Instead of perfecting existing technologies, we focused on radical innovation. Instead of building stable, comfortable societies, we built ones capable of rapid change and total mobilization. She showed images of human colonies on hostile worlds, research stations in the void between stars, and massive industrial complexes built inside asteroids. Every human settlement became a laboratory. Every problem became a chance to develop new solutions. When conventional physics said something was impossible, we found ways around the laws themselves. Fleet Admiral Sun Wu activated another display showing the evolution of human military technology. Your species developed weapons to fight other civilizations like yourselves. We developed weapons to fight an enemy that could adapt to any conventional approach. The assembled representatives watched in fascination as the display showed the development of quantum manipulation, space-time folding, and relativistic artillery. Each innovation built on the last, creating a technological progression unlike anything in galactic history. But technology alone wasn't enough, Captain Jamin added, stepping forward. We also had to change how we think about warfare itself. He showed tactical displays from recent battles, highlighting the unconventional strategies that had proven so effective against the Devourers. Most civilizations fight wars to achieve political goals, territory, resources, trade advantages. They accept casualties as necessary costs and seek negotiated settlements when possible. Humans fight wars to eliminate threats permanently. A representative from the Corvan Empire, a large reptilian being with scarred armor, leaned forward in his seat. You're saying you're more ruthless than we are? Captain Jamin shook his head. Not ruthless, focused. When we identified the Devourer threat, we didn't plan to defeat them or drive them back. We planned to extinct them completely. Every ship we built, every weapon we developed, every tactical doctrine we created had one purpose: total elimination of the enemy. That sounds like genocide, accused a representative from the Ethereal Collective, her voice carrying tones of moral disapproval. The humans exchanged glances before Admiral Deho responded. The Devourers were already committing genocide on a galactic scale. They had destroyed thousands of civilizations and shown no capacity for negotiation or mercy. Sometimes, the only way to protect life is to eliminate the force that's destroying it. Intelligence Officer Da-Un presented her own data, showing communication intercepts from across the galaxy. We've been monitoring galactic communications for centuries. We watched the Corvan Empire fall, the Mindari Collective go silent, the Nexari Federation retreat to hidden worlds. We saw the refugee streams, the desperate evacuation attempts, the final transmissions from dying worlds. Her voice remained steady, but there was emotion underneath. Every human knew that we were preparing for a war that would determine whether intelligent life survived in this galaxy. That knowledge affected every decision we made. Chief Engineer Boram stood up, her practical manner a stark contrast to the formal atmosphere of the assembly. You want to know the real secret? We didn't succeed because we're better than you. We succeeded because we had to. Your civilizations could afford to fail and recover. Ours couldn't. She gestured toward the viewing ports where human ships could be seen patrolling the system perimeter. Every human ship carries enough firepower to destroy a planet, because we might only get one chance to stop an enemy. Every human soldier trains for scenarios where retreat isn't an option, because we might be the last line of defense for our entire species. Lieutenant Commander Yan Su added, We developed quantum manipulation technology because normal physics couldn't solve our problems. We built reality-bending engines because the alternative was extinction. We fight wars the way we do because any other approach would have meant failure. A long silence fell over the assembly hall. Finally, Ambassador Thexara spoke again. And now, the Devourer threat is gone. What will humanity do with these capabilities? Admiral Deho looked out at the representatives, his expression serious but kind. The same thing we've been doing for the past 6 months. We'll answer distress calls. We'll protect civilizations that can't protect themselves. We'll use our weapons to defend life instead of destroying it. But what if we threaten you? Asked the Corvan representative. What if our interests conflict with yours? Captain Jamin smiled slightly. Then we'll negotiate. We'll find compromises. We'll solve problems through diplomacy instead of warfare. And if diplomacy fails, the human captain's smile faded. Then you'll discover why the Devourers were so afraid of us. But we hope it never comes to that. Admiral Deho returned to the podium for his final statement. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to protect it. For 3 centuries, we prepared for a war that everyone said was impossible to win. We won that war, but the cost was transforming our entire civilization into a weapon. He paused, looking directly at each representative in turn. Now we want to learn how to be something else. We want to explore, to discover, to build instead of destroy, but we'll keep our weapons ready, because there are always new threats emerging from the darkness between stars. And if new threats come, you'll fight them? Thegsara asked. We'll end them, Admiral Deho said simply. That's what humans do. The vote to formally recognize humanity was unanimous, but as the representatives filed out of the assembly hall, each carried the same thought. The galaxy now had protectors who could rewrite the laws of physics. Whether that was reassuring or terrifying depended entirely on which side of human friendship they found themselves on. 2 years after the fall of the Devourers, communications specialist Nari sat at her workstation aboard the orbital defense platform above Earth, watching her screens fill with incoming distress signals. The flow of calls for help had never stopped, and if anything, it was getting heavier. She highlighted the newest transmission and played it through her speakers. The voice was desperate, speaking in the clicking language of the Chitauri Republic. This is Hive Leader Zekta of the colony world Bright Nest. We are under attack by Void Raiders from the Crimson Nebula. Our defenses are failing. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need help. Nari sighed and added the call to her growing list. In the past month alone, she had received 47 distress signals from across the galaxy. Pirates, rogue AI networks, ancient automated defense systems gone haywire, mysterious energy entities, and a dozen other threats that had emerged now that the Devourer fear was gone. It seemed like every species in the galaxy had decided that humans were their personal emergency response service. Her supervisor, Commander Taewoo, looked over her shoulder at the scrolling list of calls. Any immediate emergencies? The Chitauri situation is urgent, Nari replied. Void Raiders typically don't leave survivors. But we also have those energy beings attacking the Nexari research station, the AI rebellion in the former Corvin territory, and something called Star Eaters moving through the Outer Rim. Taewoo nodded and activated his communication link. Command, this is Station Control. We need fleet assignments for current threat assessments. The response came quickly from General Jihoon's office on the surface. 5th Fleet is handling the Chitauri situation. 7th Fleet is investigating the Star Eater reports. The Nexari problem has been assigned to Special Operations Team Alpha. Nari felt a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The human fleets had become incredibly efficient at responding to crises, but the constant demand was wearing on everyone. They had gone from preparing for one massive war to fighting dozens of smaller conflicts simultaneously. On the bridge of the TSC Busan's Thunder, Captain Jamin reviewed the tactical situation around Bright Nest. The Chitauri colony was under siege by a fleet of ramshackle ships crewed by various criminal species. The Void Raiders were notorious for their brutal tactics and complete disregard for civilian casualties. Status. Report, he ordered as his ship dropped out of spacefold. Near the battle zone, Lieutenant Yujin studied her sensors. 43 Raider vessels, mixed classes. They're using stolen military hardware, but nothing sophisticated. The colony's orbital defenses are down, and they're preparing landing craft for surface assault. Time to intercept? 8 minutes at combat speed. Jamin considered his options. The Raiders would expect conventional tactics, a running battle with energy weapons and missile exchanges. Instead, he chose to end the threat immediately. All ships implement Thunder Protocol. Target the largest Raider vessels for kinetic strikes. Small craft will be handled by point defense systems. Science Officer Kyung-ho looked up from his station. Sir, Thunder Protocol against pirates? Isn't that excessive? The Chitauri civilians on that planet don't have time for a prolonged engagement, Jamin replied. We end this quickly and completely. The human fleet accelerated to combat velocity and opened fire with their relativistic cannons. The lead Raider ship, a converted freighter armed with scavenged weapons, simply ceased to exist when the first kinetic round hit it. The explosion was so violent that 3 nearby vessels were destroyed by the debris. The remaining Raiders tried to scatter, but human point defense systems tracked every fleeing ship with relentless precision. Pilot Commander Haewon led her fighter squadrons in surgical strikes against the landing craft, ensuring that no Raider would reach the colony surface. The entire engagement lasted 4 minutes. In the aftermath, As human ships began rescue operations, Haiwan found herself thinking about how different their wars had become. The Devourers had been a clear, absolute threat that required total destruction. These smaller conflicts were more complex, often involving civilians, political complications, and the need for measured responses. But the galaxy expected humans to solve every problem with the same devastating efficiency they had shown against the ancient machines. Meanwhile, on the research vessel New Seoul, Dr. Yoonji was dealing with a very different kind of crisis. The energy beings attacking the Nexari station weren't malicious invaders. They were refugees from a dying dimension, seeking refuge in normal space. The Nexari had attacked them first, mistaking their desperate attempts at communication for hostile action. "The solution isn't military," she explained to Admiral Sunwoo over subspace communication. "These beings just need a place to exist peacefully. I'm negotiating with both sides to establish a shared research station where they can study interdimensional physics together." Sunwoo nodded approvingly. "Good work. Not every problem requires kinetic solutions." But even as he said it, he was reviewing reports from the Outer Rim, where Captain Minho's fleet had discovered that the Star Eaters were actually ancient terraforming machines left behind by an extinct civilization. The machines were trying to convert hostile worlds into garden planets, but their programming was flawed, causing them to consume the stars themselves for energy. The solution required precise strikes against control nodes buried deep within each machine, followed by careful reprogramming to correct their original directives. It was surgical work that only human technology could accomplish, but it saved both the machines and the star systems they threatened. Back on Earth, General Ji-hoon stood in the Strategic Command Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing human fleet positions across the galaxy. Red markers indicated active conflicts, yellow ones showed potential threats, and green markers represented successful interventions. The map was mostly green, but the red and yellow markers never disappeared entirely. "Status report," he requested from his aide. "Colonel Dongwoo, currently deployed 18 fleets across 47 systems. Response time to new threats averaging 6 hours. Casualty rates remain minimal for both human forces and civilian populations. And production? New ship construction continues at maximum capacity. We're launching 2 new vessels every day, but demand for our services keeps growing." Ji-hoon studied the strategic display, noting patterns in the threat reports. "The galaxy is becoming dependent on us. Every species with a problem expects humans to solve it." "Is that necessarily bad?" Colonel Dongwoo asked. "It's not sustainable," Ji-hoon replied. "We built our entire civilization around preparing for one massive war. Now we're fighting hundreds of small ones simultaneously. Eventually we'll be spread too thin to respond effectively." As if to prove his point, a new priority alert flashed on the main screen. Communications specialist Nari's voice came through the speakers. "Command, we have a code red situation. The Velthari homeworld is reporting spatial anomalies consistent with extra-dimensional invasion. Ambassador Thexara is requesting immediate assistance." Ji-hoon activated his command authority. "Dispatch the First Fleet immediately. Alert Admiral Daeho that we may be facing a threat comparable to the Devourers." But even as he gave the orders, he wondered how long humanity could maintain this pace. They had become the galaxy's guardians, but guardians needed rest, resources, and time to maintain their strength. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Daeho reviewed the preliminary reports from Veltharos Prime as his fleet prepared for emergency departure. The spatial anomalies looked familiar, similar to the reality distortions that preceded Devourer attacks. Could there be survivors? Captain Jamin asked, joining him at the tactical display. "Or something worse," Daeho replied grimly. "The Devourers came from between galaxies. If there are other entities in that space." He left the thought unfinished, but both men understood the implications. Humanity had prepared for one impossible war and won it completely. But the universe was vast and full of dangers they hadn't yet imagined. As the human fleet folded space and disappeared toward the Velthari system, communications specialist Nari received 17 new distress calls. She added them to her queue and prepared to coordinate humanity's response to each crisis, knowing that somewhere in the darkness between stars, new threats were already forming. The galaxy had cried for aid, and what had arrived had indeed shaken everything they thought they knew about war, peace, and survival. But now that humanity had answered that first call, the calls would never stop coming. And somehow, Nari thought as she worked through the night, That felt exactly right. Humans had always been good at solving impossible problems. Now they would do it for everyone. The stars themselves seemed safer knowing that somewhere among them, human ships stood ready to fold space itself and bring help to any world that needed it, even if it meant fighting wars that had no end against enemies that had not yet been born.